right, we're good to go. Live, back for another AMA on the YouTubes. All right, so last month, or I guess it was this month, we asked for a bunch of questions that people might have about anything product related that we're doing here at Coinbase, and we got a lot of really good questions from the community. So thank you for doing that. I'm going to go through them really quickly, try to tackle as many as I can in the next 20 minutes or so, and then just go ahead and subscribe on our YouTube page if you haven't already done that to get future updates. By the way, I'm recording this live from Coinbase office in New York City, so you might see some people behind me this time. All right, let's get started. So there's some questions here about altcoin support. First one here is from Brain EXRN on Twitter. It would be great to see a community trust rating on altcoins. Obviously, the verdict is out for Bitcoin, so a comprehensive list of positives and potential speed bumps along the way with a star rating for all digital assets would be awesome. I totally agree. So yeah, I think crypto is moving to this world where it's kind of like the early days of the internet. You had web pages and sites like Yahoo trying to actually list every single web page on the internet in a directory. And a directory kind of works, for some, if there's like less than 100 or less than 1,000 or something, but quickly the number of pages on the internet grew to be millions and then billions. And so you needed search engines and you needed things like PageRank to try to surface the best results. Or, another analogy is Amazon.com. They've got millions of products, and there might be a product that has 2 out of 5 stars, and you can decide whether you want to buy it or not. But the best products get surfaced to the top once there's millions of something. And we are moving to a world where there's going to be, probably, 5 or 6 major cryptocurrencies that are doing a lot of the payment volume, but there'll be millions of tokens out there, one for every company or project or community or nonprofit. So we're very quickly going to end up in a world, and you can see the beginnings of this. Like Coinbase has asset pages where you can go read a little bit of information about each of the different types of assets out there. But you're going to see a world very quickly where those need to have ratings and reviews and some kind of equivalent of like PageRank, right? Where it looks at maybe hundreds of factors to try to surface the best assets out there when you search for something. By the way, it's not just companies. I mean, you're going to see assets issued for specific funds where people want to raise money, all kinds of security tokens, et cetera, et cetera. So, all right, let's keep going. So from Erickson23121556 on Twitter, price alerts on all the coins supported on Coinbase would be a nice feature to add. What's funny? We have a development version of the app that I run on my phone as well. So I get early opted into a bunch of features. It might be coming soon. You never know. Yeah, I agree. Price alerts. Actually, we've been modifying our price alerts quite a bit. In the past, we had gave people the ability to set it up manually. So you could say, alert me if Bitcoin crosses 5,000. But what we've been doing recently is actually something more machine learning based in the background, where if there's a price movement or some kind of change in the market that we think you should know about, we're going to push that notification to you proactively. And there's always this fine balance with push notifications where you don't want them to be so annoying that people disable it or they turn it off, but you want them to come frequently enough where it's the information that you really want to be receiving. So let's see, some of these questions were around utility for crypto. So from the Half Soul on Twitter, like to see a great staking dashboard made super simple for newcomers and a voting GUI that sets the standard for governance coordination. Yeah, good point. So I think a lot of the early staking applications, by the way, this is what Coinbase kind of does. We do 2 things. We try to make products that are the most trusted, and that could mean security and compliance and all that stuff. And then we also try to make products that are easy to use. And crypto is so complicated that the vast majority of people out there actually still find it way too difficult to use. So if you imagine, now today there's probably 50 million people in the world who have crypto. How do we get it to be 500 million and then 5 billion? Well, we need to make this much, much simpler to use. Just to give you like a sense of how far this could go, I mean, a lot of the people using mobile payments like M-Pesa in Africa or WeChat, some of them are not even literate, right? But they can read numbers, and so they can send payments via M-Pesa. So how do you make a cryptocurrency so easy that you can be illiterate and still use it? I mean, if we're going to get 5 billion people in the world today to use it, that's what's going to have to happen. So let's talk about staking for a minute, which is the concept here. We recently released a staking feature in Coinbase Custody, which is for institutional customers. But I would love to have that come, to more of our consumer products. And some of the things that we thought through with staking was in terms of an interface and a GUI like you have here. We said when you deposit, let's say Tezos into Coinbase Custody, should we put a little interface together? And we had mock-ups of this that said, well, choose the baker that you think it should go to, and flip a switch that moves the funds into a smart contract. And there's a 90-day withdrawal period. And there was all these kind of factors that you had to kind of go understand about staking. And we thought, like, how can we make it so simple that you just deposit Tezos and you start getting interest payments the next day? And there's a bunch that you can imagine has to happen behind the scenes to make that happen. But from the user's point of view, that's kind of all they want. I think I just want to kind of earn interest payments or something like that on these coins. So those are the sorts of things we try to do in that vein of like most trusted, easiest to use. We always try to think about how can we just take like the 5 steps and make it one. And then you mentioned governance here as well. I think that's another piece of interface that we haven't launched yet, but we've thought about it internally a little bit, which is the exact same thing. You can imagine an interface that has a bunch of proposals kind of in a list that are like things that this chain is voting on. And you have, 20,000 coins or whatever of this chain, and you can kind of go in there and read about them and vote on them, almost like a ballot, Actually, hopefully user interface even better than the ballots that are out there. If you remember the hanging Chad debacle, ballots aren't always the easiest user interfaces. So those are a few things that we're thinking about for the future. All right, from Vinny Crypto on Twitter, margin trading on Coinbase Pro. I think this is a big feature that customers are asking for. They want the ability to kind of go long or go short and get additional exposure, not just based on the amount of funds they have in their account. I don't want to say any more than that, but we are hearing this as a commonly requested feature. By the way, there's just to share a little bit about why we haven't launched that sooner. There's a lot to figure out here in that vein of most trusted. There's a lot of people launching margin products out there in the community, and they've done really well with them. So there's clearly market demand for that. In the U.S. especially, and in other markets that have more established regulatory regimes, the laws around margin and consumer protection are something that's really worth looking at. So for example, institutions can kind of go do margin pretty easily. Consumers, the laws around that are pretty extensive. And so this is one of those products where you have to innovate, not just on the technology, but also on the regulatory side. And that's kind of one of the things I think Coinbase is good at is we see stuff out there that is awesome in customer demand, and we actually make it kind of mainstream, trusted, easy to use. And part of the trust is figuring out the regulatory environment to do that. All right, so from Emilio F. Castillo on Twitter, the ability to exchange for fiat in developing countries, conquer remittances. Yes, remittance is kind of the albatross of crypto, where I think even back in 2010 or 2012, when I was first kind of getting into crypto, people were talking about remittances. And of course, the fees are so high with these remittance corridors that everybody's looking to find a way to disrupt that. So I'll share with you a little bit of how we've thought about this. So remittances are interesting. In developed countries, where Coinbase has really started off, we can provide exchange capability there by people connecting their bank accounts and debit cards and things like that. And that's kind of become a more and more liquid market. And so you're seeing the fees to exchange in those developed countries going down. Now, a lot of remittances start in developed countries, but they end up in developing countries. And the exchanges, setting up exchanges there can actually be a little bit more difficult because the regulatory regime is just not as well established. In some of those countries that need remittances the most, they have the least developed kind of infrastructure, regulatory environment. And then honestly, there's like high corruption and things like that. So if you imagine setting up remittances into Venezuela or Zimbabwe or places like that, I don't think we as a company could actually go get a banking license in Venezuela or something. we would probably have to break laws to do it, which we're not willing to do, in terms of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and all these things. And I don't think they would issue a banking license to a US company anyway. So what that means is that I think in these emerging markets, you're going to see the exchange functionality come from local exchanges, which are, like local Bitcoin was the original one that was super well known. But I think a version of that is kind of these little kiosks that are on the corner of everywhere in the world. They let you top up your cell phone minutes, and they sell you candy and sodas and things like that. Those are the people, building an agent network, if you will, kind of like Western Union, I think has 500,000 of these things or something. Building an agent network like that, or an app at least, that lets you find people there. They probably wouldn't, the agents wouldn't be actually customers of the app necessarily. It'd almost be like Yelp or something. Like, let me find a trusted local agent near me in Caracas, Venezuela. And that's the place they could go exchange the crypto that they received. So to me, that's one way that we're going to get to a world of remittances. With Coinbase Wallet, we've started to do some experiments with this in givecrypto.org, which is a charity I started last year. So with givecrypto.org, we've sent payment of crypto to about 2,500 people so far this year in Venezuela. And they are going around finding local exchangers, which is the way they're cashing it out. Or the really cool thing is they're actually keeping it in crypto. And that's what we were hoping might happen, because oftentimes people first receive crypto and then the first thing they do is they cash it out. But places like Venezuela, you actually don't want to cash it out. You want to keep it in crypto. And they're finding stores, like pharmacies or grocery stores typically, to go buy food and medicine. And we're seeing it. It's still too early to have a definitive, published paper on this or something, because it's only 2,500 people. But we're seeing some of them actually keep it in crypto in a closed loop there. So I think that's really important. The last thing I'll say about remittances is some of those people, they don't actually want to receive. Like Bitcoin has a really good brand in Venezuela. A lot of people know what that is. But what has an even better brand is the US dollar. That's actually what people want. And so we're experimenting with sending USD coin down to them. But we'll see what works best. We're willing to try whatever people start using in those regions. All right. So from Colonel Swan Jr. on Twitter, can you give a date when Coinbase Card will be available for use in the USA? I cannot give a date, but we've been really excited to see the amount of excitement and demand for that in the UK. Actually, some of you may remember, I think it was back in 2014 or 2015, we did a partnership with Shift Payments, and we actually released they released a card that would automatically debit from your Coinbase account, and that worked in the United States. The numbers were always pretty small, but we saw it grow every year. And so I would certainly be interested in doing another attempt at that in the United States. One of the biggest things I'm passionate about is that we need to shift cryptocurrency from being this investment, just purely investment or speculative use case, to delivering real world utility. And that's why we're doing the experiments with Give Crypto in Venezuela. It's why we're investing in the ways for people to access DeFi and dApps and staking and earn pages. It's because we want to grow the crypto economy, not just have it be this trading or investment use case. And by the way, I think once we can demonstrate that crypto economy, that it's growing, like people spending and using and investing crypto, a lot of the price volatility will actually decline, because it's no longer this speculation on the price of like, maybe someday in the future this will happen. It's like, oh, well, 20% of people in Venezuela are now using crypto on a daily basis, or there's 100 million people using this app on the internet or DeFi that's, every day there are 100 million monthly active users or whatever. Those are the kind of things that people can point to and say, all right, the crypto economy, the use cases are now really growing. And so this is less of a speculative bet. And Coinbase Card is one more piece of that puzzle. All right, so there's another question, a couple questions here about tax resources. So from Triple L Domino Effect on Twitter, tax gain loss info, quick tax summary, when to report, how to report would make it easier for new investors just entering the space. Yeah, I totally agree. Honestly, our tax tools could be a lot better. It feels like it's one of those things that we work on a little bit every year, and it's always a crunch, and then some other fire comes up, and I'll give a plug for cointracker.io. I think is a great tool, all built on top of our API that helps you connect a bunch of accounts together. I've used it, and I think that's a great example, by the way, of when you open up an API as a company, you never know exactly what people are going to build. That's like a great tool that somebody, actually, I know the team we met with them has made. So anyway, your question is about doing a better job showing kind of gains and loss info, how to report it, when to report it. One thing we've started tracking internally at Coinbase is, are we making money, helping our customers make money? And to me, that's like a really important metric of the crypto economy growing and our trading business being successful, because there's a you can imagine a version of a Coinbase out there that's purely focused on trading, and the more you trade, the more we make. But there's kind of this dark side of that, which is the people who are kind of the most active traders, like the day traders and the speculators. Sometimes they're the people who actually lose money. They don't make money. And the investors who, they kind of buy and they hold, or they do an index fund or dollar cost averaging, and these kind of like longer term things, they're the ones who actually make money. So long term, I don't want to be a company where there's just a lot of speculation happening. That's not motivating to me. I want the economy of the world to grow. And specifically, I think we're going to do that by creating the crypto economy, where there's more economic freedom and everybody can participate in it. It's super easy to start a business, get funding that way, get, raise money, get investment that way. I think there's even things we could do that would kind of give people a little bit of financial education, like in either right in the app or via third parties. It could kind of encourage them to save money and invest it, and like have, maybe even have it get a job, right? Completing small tasks like on Earn. So anyway, I'll tie this all back together back into taxes, which was what your question was about, which is taxes is one more way that we can help people make more money. We could say, well, if you wait another week, by the way, we have to be careful about giving tax advice. So there's a whole legal thing so this is hypothetical, but if we were to say, hey, if you wait 3 more days to sell this, you'll get long-term capital gains instead of short-term capital gains, right? That's the kind of thing that we'd love to have our customers be able to do. Or, there's a lot of things that you can change, like FIFO, LIFO methods, specific identification about which asset you're actually selling and when you're recognizing the gain, or tax loss harvesting, like all the things that Wealthfront does, right? So this is just one more way that we can help our customers make money in the crypto economy. And I think those are really cool ideas. I wish I had like more specifics to give you, like this will be launching on this date, but sometimes they get mad at me when I accidentally share those things. Okay, so there's a UX question here. A live question. Does that mean it came in live? Okay, that's awesome. It's good. We should do more live questions. So this is from JPABLORGZ. Coinbase, when are you going to be able to sell crypto in Canada? Oh man, well, we're really focused on adding more assets and launching in more countries. And actually, we were live in Canada for a while. That was like the most frustrating part. People, I feel like we don't get enough credit for like the crazy amount of work that we do flying around all over the world to kind of integrate these payment methods and speak with the local regulators and go do like, the 40th meeting to kind of finally get the thing live. Anyway, we had Canada live a while back, which maybe or maybe don't. And we had some issue there with our payment partner, and so we had to do a reset and try to find another one. This is one of these things where I kind of want to just announce it, even though we haven't talked to the team about it, so that like, a new deadline. They don't like it when I do that. So okay, I'm not going to tell you, but yes, we're working on Canada. All right, another live question from Nick Rodriguez. What are future plans for Lightning Network integration? Okay, so the layer 2 scaling solutions are going really well. I've been following along and just seeing a lot of the progress there. So I think that's super exciting for the space, and it can help all the payment use cases come to fruition. There was actually often, one thing I try to do inside the company is I certainly am not the arbiter of good ideas. Coinbase has 800 people now, and we have so many talented people. And one thing I like to do is actually ask them, like, what do you what are you playing with on the weekends? What are you doing? What are you coding at night for fun? And I did a survey of employees, like maybe it was probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I got back so many answers, like 40 answers. I asked them that, what are you playing with on the coolest technology you're playing with on the weekends for fun? And actually the top voted one was Lightning Network. So that gave me a lot of confidence where I was like, okay, this is something we should probably do. Coinbase recently hosted a hackathon. Usually once, twice a year, we take a week or at least 3 days and give employees time to just work on whatever they want. And there was a group there that worked on an implementation of Lightning that we could put into our infrastructure. So, it certainly would be beneficial for us too. Coinbase generates a lot of transactions on the Bitcoin blockchain. And honestly, we're not always like the most efficient about how we do that. We could probably be batching transactions more efficiently. We should be running a Lightning node to save costs on that. It's actually a pretty large expense inside the company. I'm trying to think what else to say on that. There's one thing I think people underestimate is that Coinbase has over 30 million people who've signed up, and during peak moments, we're actually generating a lot of transactions, and we had to write totally custom software to do that at scale. So a lot of things in computer science are relatively easy to build in a prototype. Like you could code it up in an hour or something like that, or actually the Bitcoin Core node that just runs on your desktop or whatever has an RPC interface to just generate transactions. And one might think that it would be relatively easy to upgrade that kind of software, scale it out across 1,000 machines, and you're off to the races. Well, it turns out at our scale, especially when you think about like hot wallets and cold storage, which we do for security, and the amount of dust transactions that accumulate, and we had to kind of write a lot of this like at highly scalable software. And oftentimes, by introducing scalability, you make it harder to upgrade and do some of those improvements that we might want to do. So non-trivial, but I think it's worth the effort at some point. Oftentimes in a company, you're sort of working your way down a list. You're like, what's the upside and what's the cost of these things? And it's amazing. It's like, well, this has potentially like 100 million of revenue opportunity, and the cost is, 5 person weeks of effort in the next week. And so you get these kind of crazy potential upsides. And so, and you only have time, you only have the ability to maybe do like 5 or 10 of them in any given quarter. So there's something that we might look at like Lightning Networking, like, well, that could save Coinbase $3 million a year, but it's actually not in the top like 10 just from a pure savings point of view. So the thing that's prioritizing it higher for us is not the cost savings. It's actually just the passion of the people in the company who think it's cool and it's the future of crypto. And I'm certainly open to that. Like, I want people to be able to work on whatever they think is most exciting, at least for a portion of their job. All right. Another question from Far Niente 2000 on Twitter. Faster time to take cryptos out of vault. Current lag of a few days is too long. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So my thinking on that has kind of evolved over the years. So initially, we put a 48-hour delay on vault withdrawals. And the reason was that it's a security feature, so that if all of your devices get taken over, which does unfortunately happen to people sometimes, you have a period of time, like 48 hours, to kind of begin to recover access to some of your devices and hopefully capture this. Now, that's just if there's one person on the vault. A lot of our vaults have 2 of 3 or 3 of 5 signatures and higher. And so the likelihood that, let's say, 3 of these 5 people have had all their devices compromised, it starts to go down. So you could imagine a scenario where if you have a high enough M of N number on the account, we actually might feel comfortable waiving that 48-hour withdrawal window. And to me, that would actually be a huge benefit, because I hit the 48-hour withdrawal window too, and I find it annoying. It actually reminds me a lot of Finance 1.0. It's like writing a check and it takes a couple of days, or sending a wire, it takes a day. I think in the next generation financial system, everything should be instant. But we can provide the security through things like higher M of N numbers, not these arbitrary delays. So that is somewhere on our feature list as well. I need to go ask the team about that. Thanks for the reminder. All right, we've got 5 minutes left. Live question from Colonel Swan Jr. again. Will a Coinbase card be issued in the US? Oh, I think we covered that, right? The answer is yes, but I can't tell you when. We would very much like to do a Coinbase card in the US as well. From Mr. Inclusive on Twitter, have the option on the main screen to sort the coins. I see not just alphabetically, but by market cap. Don't want to see Bitcoin Cash before Ethereum and Litecoin and Ethereum Classic. Oh, I'm so glad you brought this up. I've been kind of torturing the team about this for a little while too, where sometimes I was like looking at the app and was like, what order are these in? It's not market cap. It's not alphabetical. So I was confused about that as you were. And I believe we have a fix coming for that that's going to put them in a more sensible order. Thanks for raising that. Customer feedback. All right, from Thucker Tats, that was a TH, by the way. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Why 5 days hold on GBP accounts? I assume you're talking about when you purchase crypto. A lot of these holds that we have, which is, again, frustrating, a lot of them are due to fraud prevention. Unfortunately, there's people out there who trade in stolen bank accounts and credentials, and they often come and try to use them. That's why actually making a fiat to crypto exchange is one of the hardest things to do, is the fraud prevention piece, in addition to the security and the regulatory. But we put holds out there because we're waiting to see if we get chargebacks from fraudulent accounts. And the fraud rate is something we measure really carefully, because if it ever gets out of hand, I mean, it can wipe out our entire margin from the fee that we charge for these things. So yeah, fiat to crypto through these kind of reversible payment methods is a really difficult and expensive business. This is part of why I'm so excited about crypto, because if you imagine a world where people have crypto in the future, a lot of these problems go away. For instance, you can make an irreversible transaction when it makes sense. Or you can do the payment in real time, where it arrives in a few seconds instead of 2 or 3 days. So, we just need to modernize the entire financial system and infrastructure. A lot of these ideas that I think were rooted in really good intentions, like chargeback protection for consumers, that, like, the idea behind it totally makes sense. Like, consumers shouldn't be scammed by things, and but the implementation of it was basically created accidentally, unintentional consequences, created this situation where merchants and whatnot are exposed to this enormous amount of fraud from stolen cards. And so they end up charging a higher price. Or Visa charges a higher price, which gets passed on to the merchant, which gets passed on to the customer. And so the customer ends up paying it anyway. The solution is to modernize our financial infrastructure to make it adaptable to these kind of new use cases. It's not to accidentally create some regulation where the unintended consequences are worse than what it was trying to set out to do in the first place. All right, apologies for the rant. We've got 1 more minute. All right. So this is from Bowcoin on Twitter, not Coinbase specific, but how will or can blockchain help the healthcare environment? I keep hearing about that. Sometimes there's these like CIOs, chief innovation officers, that are at big companies, and they go to conferences, and they mention healthcare a lot to me. I don't really understand it, to be honest. So I'm always a little skeptical when they talk about it. I'll tell you one idea that I do think is interesting, which is decentralized identity. I think that could be a big deal in the future. It's something I'd like to play around with more, and maybe Coinbase can help do something there. And in decentralized identity land, you would own your own data, and third parties could kind of request and say, hey, I need your shipping address, or I need to check that you have gotten, that you have a social security number. And without sending the actual social security number back to them, you could send a signature from a third party, like a claim or an attestation that said, okay, this person does have this, verified by this third party. That's all great. Now, how could that extend to healthcare? One thing you could imagine keeping in your decentralized identity is some of your healthcare records. So, like you go to a new doctor and they say, have you gotten the measles vaccine? And they could actually initiate a request, and you'd hit approve, and it would show like cryptographically, oh, they have this thing. To me, that's like pretty far off. And I think there's actually a lot more short-term use cases for crypto that are more exciting. So healthcare is certainly broken. I think crypto is like a small part of the solution there, probably not like the thing that should get built in the next 2 years. All right, so that's all for this time. And that was fun. I mean, we're going to keep doing more of these. Hopefully you got to see a little bit of, the Coinbase office behind you. And we'll keep iterating on this format. I might do some AMAs where I have somebody else come up and do like more of a dialogue. You can kind of get to meet more of the leadership team or other employees at Coinbase. Just reach out on Twitter, at Brian_Armstrong, or if you have any suggestions about how we can make these better. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll keep sending out more video updates like this. Thank you.